Hi everyone, thank you for coming to my talk. I'm Salar Rahmanian, also known as Softinio online. You can find out all about me and find various means of contacting me by visiting my blog. I have been a Nix user and contributor since 2018. Today I'm going to tell you all about Nix and how it can help with all of your projects. What I want to do is to start with a recap of a typical development lifecycle that we all follow to get our ideas from development to production. It all starts by you working on your project coding on your laptop. I use a MacBook, but equally it could be something else like Linux. Once your code is ready for the next stage, you push it to GitHub. This starts a run of your CI/CD pipeline job, which will carry out a number of tasks for you, which may include your tests. Ultimately, after a review and release process that you follow, your code will end up on a server somewhere. For each of these environments, you typically have to install and set up a few things. Let's go through them. You install an OS, which is most likely different between your laptop's CI/CD and production. On your laptop, you may need some extra tools like Git. You install your OS and programming language packages using multiple package managers, typically. And lastly, you will need to set up some services that your application will need. That could be as simple as a configuration to an external service, or you may have to run one or more services local to your application, like Postgres or Kafka. Variations between our various environments and tools have consequences. It leads to our work to be non-deterministic and non-reproducible at times. Just because it builds on your laptop doesn't mean it will elsewhere. Ultimately, it means our work is not reliable. Now let's talk about lost developer time. There is a cost, money, and reduced velocity to deliver your work. We spend our time fixing issues due to the non-determinism we discussed. We have to spend time maintaining the different environments, creating different configurations, possibly using different tools to do it. Then we need to set up the different services our project needs, like Postgres, Kafka, in all the different environments and stages of our workflow. And finally, all of these environments do need to be tested. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to do all that and we just had one tool to use for all the environments and all parts of our workflow? Nix is the answer, and it does solve that problem. There are three parts to Nix. Nix is composed of Nix Package Manager, Nix Expression Language, and NixOS. Let's take a quick look at what they are. So Nix is ultimately a package manager. It's programming language agnostic. It's one tool, one way of building and testing everywhere, but many programming languages. Secondly, we have Nix Expression Language. It's a functional programming language that promotes immutability. It's used to add packages to Nix Package Manager. Every programming language has its own way of building a package, like how Python packages are built is very different when compared to, let's say, JavaScript or C++. You use Nix Expression Language to specify how to build it. As a user of Nix, you will always build the same way with the same tools and commands. Nix will know how to build it, accommodating the differences in how to build. You use it to tell Nix, basically, how to build, test, and deploy your work. Of course, you can use Nix Expression Language also to configure your services that you want to run. For example, if you need Postgres running with some kind of default schema. Last but not least, there's NixOS. NixOS is its own Linux OS distribution. Unlike other Linux OSs, it uses Nix Package Manager as its package manager. And then, of course, it uses Nix Expression Language to configure and set up your OS. You don't have to use NixOS as your OS to use Nix, though. But if you do, you will really like it. As an example, on my laptop, I use macOS with Nix Package Manager and use Nix Expression Language when I need to. Now, without further delay, instead of spending more time just talking about Nix, let me show you Nix and how you can use it for your projects It is just a glimpse into the world of Nix that I'm hoping will get you excited to start using Nix and making it part of your workflow. So when I turn my MacBook on, I hardly have anything installed. Let's take a look to see if I've got Python and wget installed. And as you saw from that little clip I saved from my MacBook, neither of them are installed. I need them. What do? Let's start with creating a Nix shell. I tried my best, as you can see, to avoid live demos, right? I recorded the bits I would do live coding. Yeah, so as you can see, I just do Nix shell minus p wget. That creates a Nix shell for you that now has got wget. And conversely, when you leave your shell, it destroys everything. And it does it in quite a reasonably fast speed, considering I've still got an Intel Mac. For the benefit of completion, let's just watch it do Python as well. Python as well, even though I think you see my demo. And there you go, the latest Python version is installed, and once again, when you leave the shell, it's all gone. So, wouldn't it be nice if once you are in your project folder, you have all of your OS and programming language like Python dependencies specific to your project installed, and all the services you need configured and set up for you? It's kind of like a Python's virtual env, but with your non-Python dependencies installed and services set up for you also. In your project, you can create a shell.nix file that defines how your shell is set up. When entering a shell, you can enter the name of the shell file to use. This way you can have multiple shell files, but if you don't specify it, Nix will purposefully look for a shell.nix file in your current directory. And if it can't find that, then it will look for a default.nix file before it gives up. Now, let's take a look on how we define our shell. Taking a look at a typical shell.nix file. First, we import the Nix package repository we want to use. As you can see, it's a tarball on GitHub with a unique hash for a specific release of Nix. The cool thing is you can create and use your own repository if you want and import it in the same way. Then in the build inputs array, you list the packages you want to install. In the shellhook section, you insert any bash commands or scripts you want that is run when your shell first starts. Here is another example that we've added a Postgres as a dependency to build inputs, and we've configured it so that when you enter your shell, it starts off Postgres for you. So now let's see this, let's enter our shell with this configuration and see it work. So first, I'm checking to see if Postgres is installed on my MacBook. It's not. Now I enter my shell. The file is called shell_2.nix, so I explicitly tell it to use shell_2.nix. And off it goes. And then we wait a few minutes. And then now, if we check, we were able to see that Postgres is running now, and also the dependencies that we listed in the build inputs part are there. There you go, there's Postgres running. That shows the background process of Postgres. Rough is installed, and wget that I keep using as an example here is installed. And then once again, you exit, and it's all gone. No more Postgres and no more dependencies. There we go. There we go, no more Postgres. Great, moving on. Nix shell that I just showed you is great, but it's a little bit verbose to set up and can get complex for common tasks. There is a third-party open source tool created by a Nix developer in Europe called devenv that makes it easier for you to define your local dev environment. What I want to do is now take a look at that to see how it compares to Nix shell. So let's start by creating a new project. So we go off and create a new empty folder. We go inside our empty folder. And we do devenv init to initialize the project. And there I'm just showing the fact that the folder was empty before we did devenv init. And then off that goes and does a lot of magical Nixy stuff. Great, it's done. What you'll see is that it's generated a bunch of files in your project. I'm not going to go through every single file, but let's take a look at the two most important files that it generates for you. The first important file that it generates for you is a devenv.yaml. In this YAML file, you literally list all the Nix repositories that you want imported into your project where you want to install packages from. It can be more than one. By default, it sets it up for the default NixOS unstable repository. The second file that it creates is a devenv.nix. This is kind of like devev's equivalent of the shell.nix file we talked about, and it is in here that you define how you want your shell to be configured once you enter your shell. So let's go through this file that it creates and kind of like set it up for a Python project as an example. So this is we already are importing Nix package manager in the YAML file that it came with. What we want to add to here is that devev's got a separate repository that you need to import by programming language. So because we're interested in Python here, we now add Python, devev's Python repository as a repository coming to the YAML file. The next thing we do is that this is the default devenv.nix file that it generated for you, which is basically a skeleton for you to configure it for what you want to do. Let's alter it and go through it, how you would use this for a typical Python project. So you can see on the right-hand side, you use env to add any environment variables that you want available in your shell when you enter your shell. Here in this example, I've added an environment variable called greet, which simply has a string scale by the bay in the string. You add your dependencies that you want installed in your shell to the packages array, I don't know about you guys, but all my projects have scripts in them, lots of bash scripts to automate various things. So with devenv, you can have all your bash scripts inside your devenv.nix file. You can see where it says scripts.hello.exec. Hello will be the name of the script file. Literally, it's hello I would run at the terminal, and it will behave just like as if I've run a shell script or a binary, and it will run it. And single quotes or multi-line string in front of it, you just insert your bash script, basically. It's as easy as that. Enter shell are bash terminal commands that run when your shell starts, which is great for running any initialization tasks. But the exciting part is, when it comes to common programming languages and services, you no longer have to add them as dependencies and do a lot of verbose configuration like I demonstrated with Nix shell, where you had to configure Postgres with all those multiple lines of bash to bring it up and everything. What you do with devenv is that you literally got a menu of all the common programming languages and services that you're likely to use, and you literally just enable what you need and override any of the defaults it has. In my example here, I'm enabling Python, and I'm choosing what version of Python I want. We didn't have to specify the version of Python, and if we didn't, Nix would have chosen one for us, typically the latest one that's available in the repository that you imported. Similarly, when enabling Postgres, we didn't have to list the initial databases. It would have defaulted to the Postgres database as the only database if we hadn't done that. Looking at the devenv documentation, which I'll give you a resource later, there are many programming services and tools that you can just enable this easily for developer happiness. So now, let's see this new shell that we created with devenv in action. And if you recall, I created an environment variable called greet, which has scaled by the bay, and then in my enter shell, I print it out. And also I print out in my enter shell, as soon as we enter shell, the version of git. So as you can see, that now that we've entered the shell, it does say hello from scale by the bay. It does print the version of git, and it does have the correct version of Python installed that I specified. But when you look, even though Postgres is installed, it's not running straight away. What devenv expects you to do is to do devenv up as a command to bring your services up. So now I'm doing devenv up. It creates a little kind of like a subshell within that shell, and it will bring up Postgres for me. Happy days, very minimal configuration. So far, I have shown you 2 ways to manage your local dev environment, but I did promise to show you how to solve it everywhere, giving you reproducible and deterministic environments everywhere, not just on your laptop. So let me show you Nix Flakes. Now, what is Nix Flakes? It's a package manager for your project. Think of Cargo, what Cargo is for Rust. Nix Flakes is for your project, whatever language it is. It has conventions on how to build, deploy, and run your project. It's cross-platform, and it has a distinct schema for you to follow. Let's take a look at what a flake looks like. Sorry if the text is very small, but I was genuinely trying to fit the whole thing on one slide. Looking at this Nix flake, you will see that you have inputs. These are the list of package repositories that you want to import your packages from. It can be more than one. Similar to that YAML file that devenv had, you just literally list all your inputs here. You have outputs. These are a list of systems you want to be able to build, deploy, and run your application on. Looking at the all systems array, we are listing all the systems we want to build, deploy, and run on, which does include both the ARM and Intel variations for Linux and macOS. Looking at the packages part, you define how your project is built. We choose the version of Python we want. Here, I've chosen version 3.9 deliberately so that it's different to my earlier examples. The build input list, again, includes the list of the dependencies you need, and the SRC shows where the root of your Python application is, Python application is. Going further down, looking at the dev shells part of this flake, this is where you define your local development environment. This is the same as Nix shell that I showed you earlier. To be consistent with my earlier examples, once you enter the dev environment using this flake, you'll have rough and wget as your dependencies as specified in the build inputs array. And the echo statement that I put in there will be printed on the screen once we enter this screen, as I've added it to the shell hook. So as you can see, within this one simple flake, one simple configuration, which I use Nix expression language to create, I have a single tool and a single configuration that builds, deploys, and runs on all the systems I listed. So everywhere. It's everywhere. So now let's see how do we use this flake, and let's see it in action. I created a Hello World Python application for this purpose. It's literally one that when you type in a command at the terminal, it prints a Hello World message for you. I'm not going to go through the code for that, as I want to focus on Nix. So let's take a look. So you can see there's no Python installed, and none of its dependencies are installed. This time, we type Nix develop. When you type Nix develop, it will go into the shell that you specified in your flake as your dev shell, and analogous to the Nix shell that I showed you earlier. You can see that it's got the correct version of Python, and the dependencies rough and wget are now available to you. Next, we do Nix run, which will run the application and print that hello world onto the screen. Hello, scale by debate 2023. And then the last command that I just want to show is one that's called Nix flake show, which will show you all your inputs and outputs. And it will, as you can see from this, you can see that because my laptop is an Intel MacBook, that the only output it's attempting to build is the Mac Intel one. All the other systems, it's ignoring it because that's not the current system it's running on. You may ask at this point, how easy is it to create a flake for your project? Well, Nix provides a tool which lets you create your initial flake file, have somewhere to start from. So basically, if you create your new project, you go to the root of your project, and then you do Nix flake in it, Nix will create the scaffold for the flake.nix file that I had created. And then let's take a look at what the contents looks like. You can see it's just like a bare skeleton starting point for you to add the 3 different parts that I mentioned to it to the way you want. But one step better is that Nix, if you go to their GitHub organization, they have a repository called templates, where they've actually created some default templates for all the different programming languages that you're likely to use. They're not like anything sophisticated, but like you can see that they've got one for Python, and like they got for Python and all the popular languages. The cool thing about Nix templates is that you can create your own GitHub repository of templates that you can use. And if you search GitHub, you'll see there's a lot of developers who've created their own GitHub templates repos that you can use to get started with your project by using one of their templates. And just to have a quick look at how this would work for if you want to install a template from Nix's own templates, NixOS or the GitHub org's own template, you literally pass the -- template. You tell it templates hash Python for the Python example. And the reason you do templates hash, template is the name of the repository in Nix organization, and Python, the convention is, and Python is the name of the subdirectory where the template resides. And if we have a quick look at, I've done a screenshot on my next slide. I'll just wait for you to see the flake it creates with this. If you look at the next slide, you can see that it's NixOS's templates repository, and it's the Python folder that it goes to fetch the templates from. When you want to do the same thing with someone else's GitHub repo, the steps to use that template is the same, but Nix needs to know which GitHub repo it needs to go to and which subdirectory it needs to get. So the convention it's got at the command is that you specify GitHub, which could be GitLab conversely as well, then the name of the GitHub org, followed by the name of the repo, and then hash the subdirectory that you want to use as your template. So far, you got to see just a small glimpse of what Nix and Nix Flex can do to provide you with a single tool to manage your whole lifecycle of delivering your code from your laptop to production. The last thing I wanted to share before finishing my talk was just some resources which I think will be helpful for you to get started on Nix if you haven't used Nix before. If you haven't used Nix before, 0 to Nix, which is the second URL, is actually, in my opinion, the best way to start because it gets you started with your laptop set up with using Flake, and it gives you enough information to get started without blinding you with science. And then, of course, nixorg.org is Nix's main website where you've got links to all their documentation and everything. devreal.sh is where devreal's documentation resides. Believe it or not, Nix has been around for about 20 years. So you'll find quite a lot of content on their NixCon conference YouTube channel. I'm not going to read you all the links on here, but a shameless plug, the last 2 links are to my blog and my YouTube clone that runs on PeerTube, where there are some content on Nix there that you can look at as well, and hopefully in future there will be more. I used to run some meetups in the Bay Area, so I've had a few speakers who have come to my meetups, talked about Nix, and I've uploaded it there for everyone to look. For better or worse, most of the content is all about Scala and Haskell, though, but a little bit of Nix. Hopefully more Nix later. More Nix later. That's all I have. Thank you all for coming to my talk.
We've got a couple minutes for questions. Are you all using Nix now?
Out of interest, who uses Nix today? Fantastic. We only have the other half of the room to convince. Other half of the room, come and find me. I'll do whatever I can to brainwash you. Great.
So table one upstairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.